In the face of ecological collapse, democratic erosion, and runaway inequality, a growing chorus of thinkers and activists are converging around a radical critique of capitalism and its obsession with endless economic growth. From the structural critiques of financial capitalism by Grace Blakeley to Mariana Mazzucato's challenge to value theory and state passivity, and the visionary alternatives proposed by degrowth theorists such as Jason Hickel, Kohei Saito, and Giorgos Kallis, a shared proposition is emerging. We must fundamentally reimagine the economy not as an engine of accumulation, but as a system organized around well-being, justice, and planetary limits. Grace Blakeley's body of work Stolen, 2019, The Corona Crash, 2020, and Vulture Capitalism, 2024, charts the transition to financialised capitalism in the global north. She argues that capitalism has evolved into a system dominated not by productive industry, but by rent-seeking, speculation, and the consolidation of wealth and political power in the hands of elites. Finance has detached from the real economy, transforming homes, healthcare, and public services into commodities and generating vast inequality while undermining democracy. Blakeley is clear. This system is not the result of market spontaneity, but of political design. Neoliberal policies, including privatization, deregulation, and austerity, empowered corporate and financial elites while dismantling the institutions that once balanced capital and labor. The COVID-19 pandemic only deepened this dynamic. In The Corona Crash, she describes how state responses overwhelmingly favored asset holders, tech monopolies, and corporate consolidation, while workers and communities were left to fend for themselves. In Vulture Capitalism, Blakeley dissects the architecture of corporate power, legal fictions like limited liability, intellectual property regimes, and international tax avoidance schemes that shield corporations from responsibility while enabling global extraction. Her prescription is unapologetically radical: democratic ownership, public control of essential services, and a fundamental redistribution of wealth and power. Mariana Mazzucato approaches the crisis from another angle: value. In The Value of Everything, she challenges the mainstream economic narrative that treats price as a proxy for value. Mazzucato highlights how sectors such as finance and pharmaceuticals extract enormous rents while presenting themselves as productive. She argues that rentier capitalism has distorted the economy, rewarding monopolies and speculation rather than innovation and public purpose. In The Entrepreneurial State, Mazzucato debunks the myth that innovation is the domain of nimble private firms. She documents how state-led investments, particularly in the US, underpin everything from the internet to clean energy. The problem is that the public absorbs risk while private corporations capture the rewards. Like Blakeley, Mazzucato calls for a reimagining of the state, not as a market fixer, but as a shaper and co-creator of economic value. While Blakeley emphasizes class struggle, ideology, and democratic socialism, and Mazzucato focuses on institutional reform and mission-driven innovation, their critiques converge. Both highlight the failure of neoliberal capitalism to deliver sustainable prosperity. Both call for public value to be reclaimed from private interests, and both point to the need for a deep transformation of the systems that govern production, finance, and innovation. Where Blakeley and Mazzucato critique the mechanisms of capitalism, the degrowth movement questions the entire premise of growth itself. Degrowth challenges the assumption that GDP expansion is inherently good or sustainable. Instead, it calls for a deliberate reduction of material and energy throughput in wealthy nations, while improving well-being and equity. Jason Hickel, in Less is More. How Degrowth Will Save the World redefines degrowth as liberation from exploitation, ecological destruction, and meaningless labor. Drawing on ecological economics and post-colonial critique, Hickel argues that degrowth in the global north is essential to restore global ecological balance and redress historic injustice. This means cancelling global south debt, ending extractivism, and reallocating resources to health, care, education, and ecological restoration. Kohei Saito's Slow Down, the Degrowth Manifesto, similarly frames degrowth as a Marxist response to capitalism's structural crisis. He identifies a meta-crisis driven by environmental breakdown, inequality, and political extremism. For Saito, degrowth is not just an economic strategy, but a moral imperative. It requires decommodifying essential services and organizing society around need rather than profit. Giorgos Kallis, in Defense of Degrowth, emphasizes that degrowth is not a recession, but a planned reduction of unnecessary production, particularly elite consumption and resource waste. It's about reorganizing the economy to serve human and ecological flourishing. Unless we decouple well-being from material growth, he warns, no technological innovation will be enough to avert catastrophe. David Wallace Wells, while sympathetic to degrowth principles, expresses skepticism about the term's political viability. In The Uninhabitable Earth, he warns that the urgency of climate mitigation may demand massive investment, potentially framed as green growth. He notes that framing matters. Rather than using the language of degrowth, policies like electrification or expanded public transit might gain broader support if presented as positive development rather than constraint. Nonetheless, Wallace Wells shares the degrowth critique of elite inertia and global injustice. The US, for example, inflicts an estimated $1 trillion in climate damages annually on the global south, while contributing minimally to climate reparations. Degrowth thinkers argue that downscaling in wealthy nations could free resources for just development elsewhere. Kate Raworth's Donut Economics offers a pragmatic middle ground, a model in which economies operate within ecological ceilings and meet social foundations. Her vision resonates with degrowth, emphasizing systems that are regenerative and distributive by design, prioritizing well-being over profit, circular economies over extraction. Despite their differing tones and strategies, Mazzucato, Blakeley, and degrowth thinkers share a core belief. Capitalism, as currently structured, is incompatible with ecological stability and human dignity. Whether through financialization, Blakeley, value extraction, Mazzucato, or ecological overshoot, Hickel, Saito, and Kallis, today's economy is pushing against the limits of nature, democracy, and solidarity. They also share a vision of democratic economic governance. Blakeley proposes democratized ownership of firms and finance. Mazzucato calls for mission-oriented public investment. Degrowth theorists call for participatory planning, public provisioning, and communal care. All point to the need for a new political economy rooted in justice, sustainability, and purpose. The risks are real. As Kohei Saito and Andreas Malm warn, climate collapse could be exploited by reactionary forces leading to climate fascism, militarized borders, and eco-apartheid. Malm, in How to Blow Up a Pipeline, insists that systemic change will not happen without confrontation. While not a degrowth theorist, his call for direct action complements the degrowth critique of passive, market-led transitions. Degrowth is more than a policy proposal. It is a cultural project. It demands that we reimagine prosperity beyond accumulation, more free time, public space, and meaningful connection. The path forward includes universal basic services, green job guarantees, wealth and carbon taxes, and an end to fossil fuel subsidies. But it also includes narrative transformation, moving from more is better to enough is plenty. We are entering a decisive decade. The convergence of financialised capitalism, ecological breakdown, and social disintegration demands more than reform. It demands a paradigm shift. Grace Blakeley and Mariana Mazzucato diagnose the rot at the heart of the capitalist economy, the financialisation of life, the erosion of public value, the capture of democracy. Degrowth theorists offer a path forward, economies organised around care, sufficiency, and ecological limits. This is not utopianism, it is realism in the face of planetary emergency. The alternative is collapse. The task now to build institutions and cultures for life after neoliberalism economies that are regenerative, democratic, and just.